I had and am having so much drama about this upcoming episode and the episode after. So a while ago, I kind of just had the thought that maybe it was time to sit down and share my story. And I was like, oh yeah, no problem. That's easy. Yeah, no. The more I started to think on it and the drama came up, the stories come up, and it was kind of funny because I was like, God, is this what you want me to do? Like, do you want me to tell my story? And I was like, really? Can you just make it really obvious? This is funny. So I was invited to a women's event, and I didn't know anybody, and so you'll find out later in my story, but that in myself that I went is a miracle. Anyways, I went to this event, and it turned out that there was 7 women, and they all shared their stories at this event, and I was like, okay. That was a very obvious, loud, booming God voice. Shelley, share your story. So here I am today. If you are new here, welcome to the Joyfully Made podcast. My name is Shelley Shelke, and I started this channel because I was so tired of just doing this walk and this journey alone, and really longing to not just find a community, be a part of a community, but to just share my thoughts. I get a lot of random weird thoughts. And if you've been around for a little while, you know some of the things that come out of my mouth, they're not planned and they're a little bit strange, but I just love talking about Jesus. I love a good conversation. I'm a deep girl. I'm not a fluffy girl. I like really good, deep conversation where I'm like, oh, give me a gut punch here and there, you know? Okay. Anyways, hey, welcome. If you're new here, stick around. I'm going to share my story. It's going to be 2 episodes. And through it, my hope is that it resonates with some of you. And I will share my healing journey, all of that. And yeah, I'm just going to pray. We're just going to get into it. Okay, Father, Jesus, Holy Spirit, I need the whole body today to help me through telling my story. And yeah, I guess just your plans, your purposes, and that you would be with myself and these people watching, and that you would just always do your work and your way. Thanks for being with me through this one. In your name I pray, amen. All right, so it's kind of funny, as I've been thinking about doing this probably about the last month, the word story just keeps popping up at me, and I attended that women's event, which, wow, 7 women shared their stories, and it was, I'll never forget it. It was so incredible. And the healing that they found, I think, in telling their story, some of them said that they had revelation while writing out their story. There was one woman that was telling her story, and it's her story to tell, but she's halfway through, she just bent over and she just started wailing. Oh boy, I can tell this is going to be a good episode. Heart-wrenching wails from deep in her soul. I was like, wow. And then an older lady, and there's only about 50 or 60 of us, and an older lady, she started singing a hymn, just a cappella, like, okay, well, here I go already. You guys, it was so moving. And I always try to think when I am chatting with other people and maybe not understanding them, I always remind myself that they too have a story. And we have learned that when we talk about Jesus and how he treats all the women and, well, everybody But I've talked about the women in the Gospels and how he treats them, and he knows that they have a story. And our stories have so much power, and they can bring healing. And I just wanted to start out with a couple of quotes that I found on stories, the power of your story. Sorry, this might be a sniffly episode. Okay. Your heartache is someone else's hope. If you make it through, somebody else is going to make it through. Tell your story. That's so beautiful. Tears are words that need to be written. Tears are words that need to be written. So as I tell my story, this is something else I attended, which you will find out is pretty crazy when you hear my story. But I've been attending this. I often work on Sundays, and down the road there is this church. And every Monday, they've been doing it for years, like years and years, 50 plus years. Every Monday night, they have like a youth and young adults worship service, sermon. Like, it's so good. It's kind of like a concert. Like, it's for youth. It's loud, but I'm good with that. And the other night, I went, and he talked about the 6 longings of a heart. And a human, the 6 longings that we have. So if you want to write these down, I encourage you to, because as you hear my story, we're going to hear these longings that I had as a young girl, and then a young mom, and then me now. And you're going to hear them, and you're going to be able to start seeing them in your story. So we have identity, goodness, freedom, truth, trust, and meaning. I'll tell you again. The 6 longings of every human. Identity, looking for goodness, freedom, truth, trust, and meaning. I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, into a Christian home, mother and father, and I feel like it was a pretty healthy childhood. I would say it was a Pentecostal family. We attended a Pentecostal church every Sunday. Shocking, I know. I really did love the mic at a young age. I would sing on the stage. I don't even I had the cassette tapes, you could go to like the Christian bookstore and get the soundtrack. So you guys remember Amy Grant. So I sang, I wish there's video cameras back then, but I sang El Shaddai by Amy Grant. At church on the stage. Something I learned later thinking about my story is I really just didn't have fear, which is interesting. And apparently I loved Mike. Anyways, okay. So something that plays into my story, I think, and my identity and who I was and how I saw God the Father started when I was young. So maybe you don't know, I was born with something called optic nerve atrophy, and I do have usable sight, but I am considered to be legally blind. And my father also has it. So it was genetic. I got it from him. And when I was 3 years old, I was the youngest of 3. And when I was 3 years old, my father was working, and new management came in and would not allow my dad to have a working partner. And so pretty much just got fired, laid off. And he was unable to find another job. And so my mom had to go to work. So at 3 years old, my dad became the stay-at-home dad, and my mom was the one that left the home to work. And I think it was unconventional, and I think it could have gone really bad. But my father has really cool testimony, but it was his relationship and union with God, even at that young age, that would have been early 20s, where he just, he worked it through, he shed the tears, and then he did all the cooking, he did the baking, he cleaned, he, took care of the garden. He made sure that my mom the only thing she had to do was just go to work and then come home. So I tell you a lot of this because I think seeing a father in that space as a comforter, a caregiver, a provider in a different sense allowed me to see God the Father and be more receptive to the concept of him as I grew up in life. All right. So anyways, we moved when I was in grade 4. We moved to Red Deer, and that was hard. I don't think I ever really connected with friends. I don't know why. It was in my middle school years that I did connect with one girlfriend later middle school years, and we were very close. I spent a lot of time at her house. So I went to a Christian school, and like at this point, by the time middle to late teens, I spent a lot of time, pretty much all our time was like church, school, which was the Christian school attached to the church kind of thing, and then youth group. I felt like I could preach a sermon as good as the pastor at this point. And honestly too, through my elementary and I would say probably early middle school years, I still would sing. I would still go and buy, I did the weirdest thing. I would go and buy those soundtracks, and I would just be like, hey, can I sing? Can I sing in chapel? And I would. I'm so weird. And to be honest, I don't even think I'm that good of a singer. I sung at my wedding. I surprised my husband. I sang Shania Twain, From This Moment. No, Shelly. Anyways, I was a girl of no fear, if you're getting that. And I did have a mind of my own, kind of march to the beat of my own drum. So anyways, as I got older, and the church environment was, I would say, pretty strict. It still fell under, I would think, Pentecostal evangelical. But going to a theater was evil. Listening to music that wasn't Christian was evil. Now that I'm 45, I could probably say there was probably some legitimacy in that. There was a lot of rules. I felt like there was a lot of rules. And guys, I'm a really bad rule follower. I'm kind of like the girl that steps back, watches what's going on, and will just say, okay, well, that rule doesn't really make sense, so I'm going to find a way to get around it. I used to go, I don't know if my parents just didn't know, but youth group was on a Tuesday back then. And then Tuesday night was cheap theater night. So I would just always sleep over at my friends after youth and, of course, go to a movie. Give me a weird rule and I'm probably just going to break it if it doesn't make sense. I feel like I was always in that search of meaning, belonging, again, identity, thinking back on the longings that we always had. I probably would have been like the Eve in the garden that was like, yeah, you're right. The grass looks greener. That fruit looks really good. I should probably try it. That probably would have been me. I'm sorry, but I was always not trusting, I guess, the space that I was in, not understanding it, and to be honest, not entirely fitting in. As I grew older, still teenage years, I tried to fit in. I know I always wanted to be on the worship team. Now it's maybe they're like, she can't sing, don't let her on. I don't know. Maybe that was the problem. But anyways, it was a hit, right? I didn't really fit in with the good Christian crowd. So of course I just went where I fit in. And we got into some trouble, like a lot of kids. But, at the same time, I still did a lot of interesting things. I volunteered. So my brother would run the children's church program, and he worked very much with street youth and kids in troubled homes. And He spent so much time with them, and I was close with my brother, and so did I. So I spent a lot of time like volunteering with these troubled youth, because I wasn't a troubled youth, but I loved it. And these kids, we would go to, there was this camp called Camp Living Water, and it was a native camp, and it was not what you're thinking. It was not like a fancy summer camp. I don't even know how it was like technically past health service rules. Anyways, there was like a big mud hole. There was a big hole in the ground filled with rain, and we would swim in it. And like some of these kids, we would go to the reserves and pick them up. And they would just get on the van, and they would have nothing with them. And I thought, well, if they're not going to shower all week, I don't need to shower all week either. Like I think as I went along, I loved to be around other people who I guess seemed real to me. I could relate in some way and serve. Like I was there as a counselor. I was serving. I would have those kids, sitting on my lap and singing to them and hugging them and loving them. So you can see those, just as I'm talking this out, you can see those giftings and those longings to serve and to belong and for something to make sense, for something to have meaning. If I couldn't find the meaning in the four walls of the church, then, I found it other places. And like, frankly, kudos to me for doing that. Kudos to me as a teenage girl, spending my summers out there, although too, it wasn't a super controlling environment. So I did kind of love that as well. It was a good time. As I got into high school years, a funny story, I actually met my husband in grade 6 at school, and we've known each other since grade 6. And we kind of were in the crowd that were always getting into trouble, and we were drinking, and man, I don't know why, but I just always thought the grass was always greener. I don't know what was appealing, if it was TV that made me think that, but it's so stupid. There was this one time where a girlfriend and I had read that gravel could make you high. So what did we do? We took a whole bunch. I think I took 11. It's a miracle. I didn't even end up in the hospital. I remember leaving. We did that at school in the parking lot, by the way. And I remember leaving, and my sister's like, "Why are you walking so slow?" And I felt like I was running. And we went home, and I hated every minute of it. I actually hated it. And I still remember to this day, I just went on the couch downstairs and kind of curled up and just prayed, "God, please take this away, and I will never do drugs in my life." And I never did. And I got over it. I guess my body cleaned it out, thank God. And from that day forward, I was around a lot of drug abuse and people smoking lots of pot and other things. And I was the girl, sure, if they were smoking it in the car, whatever. But I was the girl that was "Open the windows. I'm not getting hot box." I was just absolutely adamant that I would never feel like that again. So God probably saved me from who knows what, taking 11, 12 gravel, and then also saved me from getting into who even knows what other drugs I might have dabbled in. And another thing too, going into the high school years. So I grew up with, like I said, my dad has a really cool, both my parents are Christians, just to say. My dad was just the father of the home, and he had a relationship with God where they were like this. They were in union. Church was church, but God and dad were always having a conversation, and sometimes it was really annoying. God would tell him that we were out drinking, and so he would let the principal know, and a group of us got suspended, and they're all like, "Why'd you tell your dad we were out drinking?" I'm like, "Guys, I didn't tell my dad. God told my dad." So I had this I had this understanding, knowing that God was always watching, and there's a good chance he's going to tell on me to my dad. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to stop me. And perhaps that was because that was the one place where I felt like I could belong. I mean, if I didn't hang out with this crowd, where would I have hung out? Not to say maybe God had other plans that I wasn't looking at, but This was my environment. So anyways, I'm going to scooch it forward. You get the picture. I feel like there was a lot worse kids out there, but I wasn't exactly the great Christian kid going to the Christian school kind of concept. So, it was I think it was around grade 11. And I remember we were driving home from church one morning, and I said to my parents, I was like, why is the pastor always yelling? And I don't mean like excited, raising their voices. I am that kind of person. That doesn't bother me at all. I am very much like that. I can get loud, but it was like yelling, like angry. And I don't remember what they replied, but I remember that I started to really notice something just feels off. Now, one can say I probably always felt a little off. I'm not a great rule follower. I'm not very good at living in a box. Therefore, religion and I don't get along. But it came along. Now, again, some of this is fuzzy, the timeline. But there was a point in which my father actually approached the pastor and challenged him on a couple things. I don't remember what. But at this time, my two older siblings were already graduated and out of the school. But unfortunately, I was still in grade 11. So I would say that to me, it felt like a church split. So there was teachers in the school and, secretaries, admin, all of that were still very like supporting the pastor, supporting the church. And then there was the rest of us that was just kind of like waiting out the year to leave, I guess. My parents didn't pull me out of school. So during this time, I watched and I experienced a lot of what I interpreted as betrayal from, youth leaders, teachers, people that were supposed to represent God in my life, were now turning on me. Things just kind of got out of hand. Like I remember this one time, a group of us youth were at just a local kind of fast food restaurant. And back then you could smoke in the restaurant. And one of the youth leaders came up and told us that she couldn't sit with us because she was condoning our sin. I wasn't smoking, but condoning others' sins. And well, I had a few words. They weren't good words. But I wasn't too happy with that because I was like, yeah, no, that's not cool. That's not God. That's not Jesus. So at this point, I am very much like in fight mode. And her mom was a secretary at the school. And she would call my parents' house in the morning and tell them that I'm causing all of these problems in school, which I actually wasn't. I was kind of trying to hide, trying to process. I was afraid. I was scared. But if I felt like I was being attacked, I definitely stood my ground, fought back. So she would call my parents and be like, well, Shelly's causing all these problems. And I said, well, why aren't I getting kicked out of class? So I'm just getting all of these lies coming at me. You're not wanted. There's something wrong with you. What is wrong with leadership? Just the wounds, they came daily. That same lady, she yelled at me there was portables. And she yelled at me from quite a far distance. And she yelled at me, Shelly, go put some clothes on. I was wearing short shorts and a tank top. And she's like, I'm going to call your dad. And I just yelled back at her, you do that. It was so inappropriate. So much inappropriate. I had a teacher, a social teacher in the middle of class. And I was sitting at the back of class and people were asking me where I was going to go to school next year. And I was saying where I was going to go. And he pointed at me from the front of the class and yelled at me, get behind me, Satan. And so I did me. And I flipped him the bird, told him where to go with some not good words. And I don't even think I got kicked out of class. But anyways, yeah. So I kind of got pummeled that rest of the year until the end of grade 11. Meanwhile, my mom, she had been teaching in the school, so she had to go through stuff. Like, it was just the moral of that story is church hurt is a real thing. And the wounds that we can take from church hurt, and we can really it can get mixed up, like God and people, where I later on I really had to learn that, like, okay, men are imperfect, men are imperfect, and they did these things to me, and they were wrong, and they hurt, and I had to work through that. I can forgive them, all of that. And then that doesn't mean that God was and is the problem. I had to learn to kind of work through to separate that. So anyways, then I ended up I went from like a small high school with like 12 of us in a class to a full high school with like 300 kids. And meanwhile, I didn't tell them that I had low vision. I think I told a couple of teachers and asked for them to make a few things accessible, but I really just hid my vision from everybody. I joined choir. But I couldn't read any of the music sheets. I really tried, guys. I really tried. I tried to just I tried to make life work. You feel like you try to make life work? I tried. Anyways, I skipped a lot of choir. Could you imagine going to choir and not being able to read the music sheets? Oh, Lord, have mercy. He did. He had so much mercy on me. And, I didn't end up passing grade 12. I walked out on diplomas. My husband and I actually started dating at 17, and like, his story is his story, but he got kicked out of, so he was still in the Christian school, and he got kicked out of school I think he was in grade 12, because it was sometime when I was in the new school. He got kicked out of school because he smoked. He didn't smoke on the property, but he smoked off the property, so they kicked him out of school. So we had both of us went through a lot of church hurt. And so then my family, it keeps going. We tried a new church, and this was like a big and booming church. Christians, we just love to church hop. And so, it seemed good, and we were really liking it. And then all of a sudden, one Sunday, the pastor comes up in the front and says that he has been having an affair. I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, at this point, I'm literally like, wow. Because I had been taught and raised to put a pastor on a pedestal. The pastor knows everything. All hail the pastor. That was kind of how I felt. I was raised, whether that was the intention or not. That was how I got it. So naturally, when I went to this new church, I was like, okay, this is good. And, the pastor's up here again. And then, he's a man. And he came out and said that he was having an affair. And so, just another arrow to my heart, another belief for me. It was like, okay, wow, Christians really suck. At this point, I'm probably around, I guess I must be around 18 years old. And I can imagine, now that I think about it, like, that must have been really weird for my parents too, to have gone to church for years and years and years and now just feel like completely displaced like that. I'm sure they have some interesting takes on all of that. But, I'm kind of going to wrap it up a little bit here. So, at this point, the conclusion that I had come to was, well, God is God, man is not. And, what I need to make sure of is that me and God are connected, and no one else gets to speak into my life. No one else gets to be God in my life. Only God gets to be God. Now, did that mean I was like all living in union with him and understanding? No, but at that point, I think too, the fact that I had my father who always still had that relationship with God, I knew that there was a thing. Like, I knew that there was Christianity was a relationship, that there was more to it than church. So I think that was a huge saving point for me. I was able to just kind of like fall back into, all right, maybe this church thing doesn't work. Maybe it's garbage, but I do know there's a God, and God gets to be my God. Nobody else gets to be on the pedestal. Nobody else gets to take that place. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, to this day, I have done a lot of work and healing, and I still will not refer to somebody as pastor. I can't do it. I don't know why. Maybe someday I'll get there. Well, next episode we'll talk a little more about church, but I did want to touch a couple of a few episodes ago. I talked about when I wrote a letter to my 17-year-old self, and that brought a lot of healing. And a couple of things from that. So something I want to bring up is, as I'm telling my story, like, you might be having anxiety, like even hearing about like my church stories. Some of your memories might be coming back. First of all, like, take a minute and let's say, Jesus, come in to these stories, come into these moments with us. I have shared with you guys how he has walked me through some of this, and I have found a lot of healing. And so back to that story when I wrote a letter myself. So how that actually came about, and sometimes when something needs to be dealt with in us. For me, I kept having dreams. So for years, like I'm talking years, I would have a dream that I was supposed to go to my graduation. So I never got to go to my graduation, right? Because I changed schools. Now, when you're 17, 18, that's very traumatizing. Like, that's something you look forward to, getting beautiful with your friends, all of the things. And so I always had this dream that I was getting ready for my grad, and I was with my best friend, and I could never make it. I never made it to my grad. And so I would always have these dreams. And finally, a year ago, January, I stopped, and it just hit me. And I was like, oh, I never grieved. This whole like grieving thing, it's new to me, but we need to do it. And I never felt the emotions. I never felt the feelings. It was just like, well, that's another thing I didn't get to do because of the stupid church and all of the whatever that I went through. And so I took the time, and part of me writing that letter to myself was I allowed myself to just grieve those emotions and that loss, those memories that I should have had, all of that was stolen from me of no fault of my own. I grieved it, apparently still grieving it. And I wrote that girl a letter. And yeah, it's like, obviously it still hurts. Our stories matter, you guys. Our stories matter. And I wanted to tell you one other thing. So when I want to reiterate, when these memories come up, and sometimes we need professional help as well. A good Christian counselor, like, get some good books. I can recommend some, but I remember a memory came up. So when I went to the new school, like, I just brushed on it, but it was really scary for me because nobody knew that I couldn't see, because I look like I can see, and I can see, like, I don't run into things. I don't have a cane. I don't have a dog, but essentially I can't see. Everything's blurry. And so I was taking the city bus for the first time in my life. I was going to be taking the city bus to school. And I was so nervous. And I remember a bus coming up to the bus stop. And I was like, is that my bus? Is that my bus? Like, and I didn't get on. And this was like, I don't know if this was the first or second day of school or whatever. And then I was like, oh no, I think that was my bus. So I went running after the bus. And then got on the bus, and it was just full of kids. And like, I'm the new kid, can't really see. Like, I probably said something to just cover my whatever. But I had so much anxiety when actually remembering that story. And one of the things that when I was just like working through healing, and God kind of brought that memory to my mind, and I just saw Jesus running beside me. That I wasn't alone. I'm strong. I'm a resilient girl for sure. I put on a good face, but I was so scared too. Oh, anyways, there's healing. There's healing for the stories. We've all been through stupid crap that wasn't our fault. And, through it, I gained heart beliefs, and we've talked about heart beliefs and mindsets that weren't right. And, through God's pursuit of me, like Psalm 139, we have worked through so much. And, I've found a lot of healing, and, like I said, I'm still working through stuff. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to encourage you to, if you're open, start thinking about your story. But think of it, invite Jesus in when you do it. Invite God. Sit down. Whether that looks like journaling for you, or maybe he gives you a dream. And I recently had another dream that left me feeling wrecked. And now that I am in this space, I'm like, okay, wow, there's some stuff there I need to work through. I'm not telling you that one, but yeah. And remembering that he's not man. He never wanted us to go through hurt. He never wanted us to go through pain. And, his desire is to bring the healing and the wholeness. So let's just pray this out, and then I will continue my conversation for the next week. Okay, Jesus, thank you. Thank you that even though we didn't know it, you were always there with us through every moment, through every heartache, for everything that we didn't understand, that you were always there, and that you never leave us. I pray that as these women go into their week, and whoever is listening to this, that you would so gently bring up the areas that they are ready for healing, Father God, and that you would be with them. You would love them as a father, and just bring that healing, Lord. Thank you for all of it. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, guys. I'll see you next week for part 2.